Help me. Save him.
Rain lashed Mama Ngozi as she pounded on Chinwe's lecky door. "Tunde's alive! Help me save him!" She sobbed, her wrapper clinging, voice breaking. Inside, a bitter voice snapped.
He's nothing to me.
Slammed the door with her laughter cold. Across town, he clenched his fist tightly, eyes burning with anger as he stared at the computer screen. "She's lying," he roared. But who was this old woman begging in the storm? Why did the woman turn so fast? What secret burned in Tunde's glare? Unravel the mystery with Baobab African Tales. Subscribe and chase the truth. In Lagos, where the city lights blazed bright enough to drown out the shadows of Mokoko's floating slums, there lived a woman named Folake Adeyemi. She wasn't just anybody. Folake was a titan, the queen of real estate, her name echoing from the high-rising offices of Victoria Island to the dusty corners of Oshodi Market. Her mansion stood tall, its marble floors gleaming under chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Ladies rolled smooth through the chaos of Third Mainland Bridge, honking past Okadas and yellow Danfos. At her family gatherings, the juju drums beat loud, the air thick with the scent of suya grilling over open fires. But don't let all that wealth trick you. Folake's heart carried scars deeper than the Lagos Lagoon. She'd learned the hard way that money draws vultures, and she'd lost too much to trust easily. Her only son, Tunde Adeyemi, was her pride. 32 years young and handsome as a Yoruba prince, straight out of Oba's palace. His eyes shone with kindness, his suits tailored sharp, and his voice carried the calm of a man who'd inherited his father's oil empire without breaking a sweat. But when it came to love, Tunde was a baby in the bush, green as unripe plantain. "Mama," he'd say, leaning back with a glass of palm wine, "love's not about what's in your pocket. It's what you see in someone's soul." Folake would sigh, her fingers tapping the armrest. She'd seen the world chew up dreamers like him, and in a city where riches and rags slept side by side, she knew better than to let his heart wander blind. Then came Chinwe Okeke, blowing into Tunde's life like a whirlwind off the Atlantic. 27, with skin smooth as cocoa butter and a laugh that turned heads at the Eco Hotel Fashion Gala, she was a sight to behold. An Instagram queen, her feed was a parade of Ankara gowns, gold hoops, and poses that screamed glamour. Tunde met her under the flashing lights of that gala, her heels clicking on the polished floor, her smile wrapping him tight. 2 moons later, he came home buzzing. "Mama," he said one evening, the Lagos skyline glowing behind him, "I've found her. Chinwe's the one. I'm going to marry her." His voice was sure, his grin wide, but Folake's stomach twisted. She'd seen girls like Chinwe before. Pretty as peacocks, sweet as honey, but hollow as a dry well. "My son," she said, her tone low like thunder rolling in from the coast. "Not every flower is what it seems. Some bloom just to trap flies." Tunde chuckled, brushing it off with a wave, but Folake wasn't playing. Back in her days as a journalist, she'd dug up secrets dirtier than Lagos mud, and her instincts screamed. His eyes glittered too much like gold coins, her words too polished. In a place where trust was a gamble and family was sacred, Folake vowed to test this girl. She'd peel back the mask, even if Tunde fought her every step. One sticky morning, when the Lagos sun burned hot enough to fry an egg on the pavement, Folake Adeyemi disappeared from her mansion. She didn't just leave, she shed her skin, like a snake ready for a new game. Gone were the silk kaftan robes that swept the floor, the gold bangles that jingled like market bells. She traded them for a faded wrapper, stained with years no one could count, and a pair of worn-out slippers that slapped the ground. Into Mokoko she went, that watery maze of shacks where fishermen cast nets and children paddled canoes. There she became Mama Ngozi, a poor widow, hunched over a crooked cane, her eyes red with tears she'd practiced in the mirror. "I've lost my son," she'd wail to anyone who'd stop. "Taken from me in a fire when he was just a boy. Oh, my heart's been bleeding ever since." It was a tale to twist your insides, and Folake played it like a Nollywood star. She tracked Chinwe down to a sleek cafe on Victoria Island, where the air smelled of coffee and money. Chinwe sat there, legs crossed, sipping cappuccino in a dress tight as a second skin, her phone glowing with likes and comments. Mama Ngozi shuffled in, her wrapper dragging, her voice cracked like dry earth. "My daughter, please, hear me," she begged, leaning on her cane. "Antunde's real mother, separated by a cruel twist of fate. A fire stole him from my arms years ago, and now I've found him. You're Tunde. Help me bring him back to me, I beg you." Her words trembled, heavy with a mother's pain, the kind every Yoruba child knows to honor. Chinwe didn't even look up at first. Then she raised her head, her red lips curling into a smirk that could cut glass. "You think I'm your bank, eh? Old woman, if you want money, go sit by the roadside with a bowl. Don't waste my time." She flicked her hand like she was shooing a mosquito, then went back to scrolling, her nails tapping the screen. Mama Ngozi stood there, head bowed, but Folake's eyes burned beneath the act. She'd slipped a recorder into her wrapper, catching every venomous word. Later, alone in her dark study, she played it back. "That girl's heart is cold," she muttered, pouring herself a shot of ogogoro to steady her nerves. "Cold as the river at midnight, no warmth for a mother's cry." She called Tunde home that night, the air thick with the hum of generators outside. He walked in, his tie loose, his face still soft with hope. "Mama, what's this about Chinwe?" he asked, slumping into a leather chair. Folake set the recorder on the table, pressed play, and let Chinwe's voice fill the room. Sharp, cruel, cutting. Tunde's brow furrowed, but he shook his head. "Maybe she was just stressed, Mama. You know how Lagos life can press you. I still see love in her eyes when she looks at me." His words hung there, stubborn as a goat refusing to move. Folake leaned forward, her voice low like a storm brewing. "Love doesn't hiss like a snake, my son. You think I'd put on this charade for nothing? I've walked these streets, dug up lies when I was a reporter. One test won't do. I'll peel her open till you see the rot." Tunde sighed, running a hand through his hair, but Folake wasn't swayed. She'd spent years sniffing out truth in this city, interviewing chiefs, chasing crooks, dodging danger. Chinwe was a puzzle, and Mama Ngozi was just the start. In Lagos, where family was your anchor and trust a fragile thread, Folake would protect her boy, even if he kicked against it like a child refusing medicine. Then came the big move, the kind of play that could shake Lagos to its bones. One sweaty morning, when the air hung heavy with diesel fumes and the shouts of hawkers, whispers started creeping through the city like termites in wood. Tunde Adeyemi, the golden son of the oil empire, had vanished after a business trip to Abuja. The story grew legs fast. His plane never landed, his phone went dead, and the family's oil wells were drying up. Debts piled high, contracts turned to dust, and the Adeyemi name teetered on the edge of ruin. By noon, it was all over Oshodi, Lekki, even the WhatsApp groups buzzing in barbershops and salons. But here's the truth. It was all a lie, a grand masquerade spun by Folake herself. She'd hired actors to leak the rumors, paid a friend at a radio station to sound the alarm, even staged a frantic call to Tunde's office. Her son wasn't lost. He was holed up in a quiet guest house in Icheja, sipping malt and waiting for her next move. Folake didn't stop there. She pulled on her Mama Ngozi disguise again, the wrapper now soaked from a sudden rain, her cane tapping the wet ground. She showed up at Chinwe's fancy apartment in Lekki, where the gate man eyed her like trash before letting her in. "Chinwe, my child," she cried, her voice breaking like a cracked pot. "I've found Tunde. He's hiding, scared for his life, but I need money to bring him home. You're his fiancé. Save him. I beg you." The plea hung there, raw and desperate, the kind of call that'd melt any heart rooted in family. Chinwe stood in her doorway, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair piled high like a crown. She didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed. Her voice sliced through the rain like a cutlass. "If he's broke, what's he to me? You think I'll waste my coins on a ghost? Get out, you old hag. Don't dirty my steps." She slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, then turned back to her mirror, brushing mascara on like nothing happened. That night, Folake heard from a spy, she'd planted eyes everywhere, that Chinwe strutted into a party at a Lekki club, laughing loud, her arm hooked around a new man, a fat cat trader with a Rolex flashing like a beacon. No tears, no worry, just a hunter sniffing out fresh meat. Tunde saw it all, thanks to a tiny camera Folake had tucked into Mama Ngozi's shawl. He sat in that Icheja guest house, the fan whirring overhead, his fists clenched tight enough to crack walnuts. The footage played on a laptop. Chinwe's cold words, her quick switch to another man. "Mama," he said, his voice cracking like a boy's, "I saw her walk away like I was a used rag. But my heart still wants to believe she's got some good in her." His eyes were wet, his faith hanging by a thread. Folake sat beside him, her kaftan rustling, her voice steady as iron. "A woman who runs when the money's gone isn't a wife, Tunde. She's a leech, sucking you dry. You've got to see it now." But Folake wasn't done digging. She called up old contacts from her journalism days. Street runners, bar owners, even a retired cop in Port Harcourt. Word trickled back, dark and heavy. Chinwe had a history. Years ago, she'd charmed a businessman in PH, drained his accounts dry, then bolted when he caught her selling his car. "She's a hunter," Folake whispered to herself, sipping tea in the dim light of her study. "And my son's her latest kill." Tunde's hope was stubborn, though, clinging like dew on morning grass. He'd seen the proof, heard the venom, but his heart still wrestled with the truth. Folake knew one test more wouldn't break him free. She needed a hammer to smash the illusion wide open. In this city, where wealth could vanish like smoke and love could turn to ash, she'd fight till her boy's eyes were clear. And fate, as it often does in these lands, was waiting in the wings with a twist of its own. Coco, where the houses perched on stilts above murky water like birds afraid to land, lived a young woman named Aminatu Yusuf. She was 25, with no fancy heels or Instagram fame, just a quiet strength that shone like the moon on a still night. Her days were spent with a charity, hauling wood and books to build a school for kids who'd never seen a classroom. She wore simple wrappers, her hair tucked under a headscarf, and her hands were rough from work, not polish. In a city like Lagos, where glitter often hid grit, Aminatu was a rare soul, someone who cared more for others than for herself. The folks in Makoko called her Sister Moon, not because she glowed loud, but because she lit up the dark in her own soft way. One afternoon, as the sun beat down and the air smelled of fish and salt, Mama Ngozi came hobbling through the narrow lanes. Her cane sank into the mud, and then she stumbled, her wrapper catching on a splintered plank. Down she went, a cry escaping her lips. Aminatu was there in a flash, dropping a stack of notebooks to rush over. "Auntie, are you okay?" she asked, her voice warm as a mother's hug. She knelt, brushing dirt off Mama Ngozi's arm. "Come, let me help you up. Lean on me." She didn't care that the old woman's clothes were ragged or that her hands shook. She lifted her gently, guiding her to a bench under a crooked mango tree. "Rest here, Auntie. I'll fetch you some water." She ran off, returning with a chipped cup, her smile bright as the day. Folake, hidden beneath Mama Ngozi's weathered face, felt something shift inside her. This girl's heart is pure gold, she thought, sipping the water to keep up the act. Not like Chinwe, all shine and no soul. Aminatu sat beside her, fanning her with a piece of cardboard. "What brings you here, auntie?" she asked, her eyes curious but kind. Folake spun her tale, half truth, half lie. "I'm looking for my son, Tunde. He's lost to me, and I need help to find him." Aminatu's face softened. "That's heavy, auntie. I'll pray he comes back to you." But Folake saw more than kindness. She saw a chance. "Aminatu," she said, her voice low, "I need you to do something for me. There's a woman, his fiancée, who might know where he is. Pretend you're his old friend and talk to her. It's for my family." Aminatu frowned, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. "I don't like lies, auntie. My father taught me truth is our strength, but if it's to help you find your son, I'll try, just this once." Folake nodded, hiding a smile. She gave her Chinwe's number, directions to a bustling market in Yaba where they'd meet, and a story to tell. Aminatu went the next day, her sandals slapping the dusty ground, her heart uneasy but willing. She found Chinwe haggling over a bolt of lace, her voice loud and sharp. "Excuse me," Aminatu said, stepping close. "I'm an old friend of Tunde's. I heard he might still be alive, hiding somewhere." Chinwe's eyes snapped up, not with love, but with a glint Folake knew too well. Greed. "Where is he? Tell me now," she demanded, her tone all business. Aminatu hesitated, caught off guard. I don't know for sure, just rumors." Chinwe faked a tear, her voice suddenly sweet. "Oh, my poor Tunde. Tell me more later, eh?" But that night, Folake's spies reported back. Chinwe had hired a roughneck from the motor park to tail Aminatu, sniffing for Tunde's trail. Folake listened to the recorder, her jaw tight. "That girl's a spider," she hissed, "weaving traps for anyone she can catch." Aminatu didn't know the danger she'd stepped into, but her kindness had already tipped the scales. In a city where trust was a coin easily flipped, this Makoko girl was a light Folake hadn't expected. The final act was coming, and Aminatu, without even knowing it, had set the stage ablaze. The night arrived like a drumbeat, steady and heavy, the full moon hanging over the Adeyemi mansion like a lantern, lighting up secrets. Folake had set the stage, every detail sharp as a tailor's needle. She'd called Chinwe earlier that day, her voice thick with urgency. "Come to the house tonight," she'd said over the crackling line. "It's about Tunde's fate, family only." Chinwe didn't ask twice. She smelled money or drama, and either way she'd bite. By dusk, the air buzzed with tension, the scent of jollof rice and fried plantain drifting from the kitchen where cooks hustled for the guests. Folake had invited cousins, uncles, a few trusted friends, witnesses to what was coming. The living room glowed dim, candles flickering on every table, shadows dancing on the walls like spirits waiting to judge. Chinwe swept in at 8 sharp, her heels clicking loud on the marble floor, her Ankara gown shimmering gold and green, tight enough to turn heads. She tossed her hair, her eyes darting like a hawk's, sizing up the room. Tunde stood off to the side, his face tight, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He'd agreed to play his part, though his heart still ached. Folake watched from a corner, her caftan dark as midnight, her face calm but her pulse racing. Then the door creaked open, and Mama Ngozi shuffled in, her wrapper torn, her cane tapping slow. The room went quiet, all eyes on her. "I've got something to say," Mama Ngozi rasped, her voice shaking like leaves in a storm. She raised a trembling hand, pointing at Tunde. "That boy, he's not Folake Adeyame's son. He's mine, stolen from me in Makoko years ago when fire took my home. I've got proof." She pulled a crumpled photo from her shawl. Folake had staged it, a blurry shot of a baby that could have been anyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd, cousins whispering, an uncle muttering, "Ew, what's this now?" Chinwe's face went pale, then hard as stone. She spun to Tunde, her voice cutting sharp. "If you're not the heir, we're done, Tunde. I didn't sign up for a nobody from the slums." She threw her hands up, her gold bangles clanging like a market bell. "You think I'll waste my life on a broke man? Bye-bye." The words hit like a slap, raw and loud, echoing off the walls. Tunde stepped forward, his eyes wet, his voice low, but Chinwe, I heard you clear as day. You never loved me. Just my name, my money. It's over. The room held its breath, tension thick as Lagos traffic. Then Folake moved, slow and deliberate, peeling off Mama Ngozi's wrapper to reveal her own kaftan underneath. She stood tall, her voice booming like thunder over the Atlantic. "I'm Folake Adeyemi, Tunde's real mother. This was a test, Chinwe, and you failed it worse than a child cheating in school." She tossed the cane aside, her eyes blazing. "You're no wife. You're a snake, slithering for gold. Get out of my house." Chinwe staggered back, her mouth flapping like a fish pulled from water. You tricked me," she stammered, her heels slipping on the floor. Folake laughed, cold and sharp. "No, girl, you tricked yourself. Your greed laid you bare for all to see." The guests erupted, cousins jeering, and auntie shouting, "Shame on you!" Chinwe's face burned red, her hands clutching her purse as she bolted for the door. Her heels echoed down the hall, fading into the night, leaving nothing but disgrace behind. The crowd buzzed, some clapping, others shaking their heads. "That's Lagos for you," an uncle chuckled. "Money talks, but truth walks louder." Tunde sank into a chair, his shoulders slumped, his voice barely a whisper. "Mama, I was a fool." He rubbed his face, tears streaking his cheeks. "I kept hoping she'd prove me right, but she proved you right instead." Folake knelt beside him, her hand firm on his shoulder. "No, my son, you weren't a fool. You were blind. Love can cloud your eyes, but now you see clear as the moon up there." She nodded toward the window, where moonlight spilled in, washing the room in silver. "We've cleaned the trash out. You're free now." Folake stood, her heart heavy but satisfied. She'd won this round, exposed Chinwe for the vulture she was, but the victory wasn't sweet yet. Tunde's pain lingered, a wound she couldn't stitch up with words. Still, as she glanced at the moon, a flicker of hope stirred. She thought of Aminatu, that quiet girl from Makoko, the one who'd unknowingly lit a spark in this dark game. The night wasn't over, not really. In a land where fate loved to twist and turn, Folake knew something good was waiting, just beyond the shadows. Later, Tunde drove to Makoko, his tie gone, his sleeves rolled up. He found Aminatu painting a school wall, kids giggling around her. "Aminatu," he said, "you helped my mama save me from a mistake. I owe you." She wiped paint off her hands, smiling. "You don't owe me, Tunde. I just did what's right." He kept coming back, carrying bricks, cooking jollof rice for the kids, proving he wasn't just a rich boy. Aminatu pushed him away at first. "I don't trust fancy men with sweet words," she said, her eyes wary. But Tunde stayed, steady as the tide, until her walls cracked. One evening, under that same moon, Aminatu sat with him by the water. "When I was little," she said, "a boy from the city gave me a pencil. He came with his parents to Makoko. Was that you?" Tunde's jaw dropped. "I remember that day my dad took me to see the real Lagos. It was you?" They laughed, the past weaving them closer. Months later, they married in Makoko. No grand hall, just drums and dancing under the stars. Folake stood there, her kaftan shimmering, her voice warm. "I've found a jewel for my son at last." The kids cheered, the moon glowed, and Tunde held Aminatu's hand, knowing fate had tied their threads long ago. In this story, we see life's lessons unfold like a parable from Scripture. Chinwe's greed reminds us of Proverbs 11:6. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. Her downfall teaches us that chasing wealth over love leads to ruin. A warning for us in Lagos or London, to seek God's truth over worldly glitter. Folake's fierce love for Tunde echoes a mother's prayers, showing that family, guided by faith, can shield us from harm, just as Psalm 32:7 says, "You are my hiding place." Aminatu's kindness, pure as a stream in Makoko, proves that God honors a humble heart. Her light shines, like Matthew 5:16 calls us to do. And Tunde's journey, from blindness to clarity, mirrors how God's timing reveals destiny. His reunion with Aminatu, a sign that Proverbs 16:9 holds true. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. For us, whether in Accra or Atlanta, this story urges trust in God's plan. When storms hit, betrayal, loss, doubt, faith and family anchor us. God peels back life's masks, showing who's true, and in His grace, He leads us home. Share your thoughts below. Let's uncover the lessons together. If this story opened your eyes, like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more Baobab African Tales. We've got gripping stories brewing, tales of mystery, justice, and wisdom rooted deep in our soil. Type in the comments, "Lord, save my life." Stay blessed, stay wise, and never let the shadows fool you.